God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Or, if going through life, if yourself is like a boat and you're navigating through life, the trick is to move through the water, but don't let the water get in the boat. Let my boat go through the water, don't let the water get into my boat. Together? Let my boat go through the water, don't let the water get into my boat. How does the water get into your boat? Oh, well, sometimes there's choppy seas, but most often, we drill the holes. And how do we drill the holes? Well, by not minding our own business. By doing the things that, that cause the problems in our lives. I've had so many people, Lynn's talked to me about this too, in her line of work, in therapy, and also I as a minister. So many people have come to us and saying, but they want to argue with me, but they keep arguing with me. And the answer is what? Well, when you talk to people, sometimes the answer is, well, if it's a tennis game, don't return the serve. It's not a tennis game if you don't return the serve. You say, but I want to stand up for something. I want to speak my truth. There's a huge difference between speaking your truth and arguing. What's the difference? I speak my truth because it's my truth and I'm speaking it. But I'm arguing to get you to understand and change your opinion. But how futile is that? Have you ever succeeded? So a woman once said, the only time a woman changes a man is when he's a baby. You can't change people. We said, well, wait a minute. I'm here to heal my brother. You heal your brother by remembering that your job, as Jesus said, is to shine your light. And when your light's being buffeted around in the wind, to mix my metaphors, you put a chimney around it. And you do that by taking the steps you need to do to keep your light up. I take the steps I need to take to keep my light up. Together? I take the steps I need to take to keep my light up. And that means not drilling holes in your boat as you're trying to navigate your way through life, but your hands need to be occupied with rowing. You say, but I want to make a difference in the world. You will make a greater difference allowing your light to shine. And then you'll know when to speak and when not to speak and what to say and what not to say. But never to try to get your point across. I was raised in a family where I learned this, and I'm going to talk a little. It's dangerous. But my parents were on one side of the fence, and my sister and I were on the other side of the fence. And I learned how not to argue. I know, it's an amazing thing. All it takes is not arguing. You see, but what if they argue? But you just say, I don't argue, or you make yourself occupied, or you change the subject, or you leave the room. You make a decision what you let into your parlor. If somebody walks, in the old days they had parlors. If somebody walks up to your doorstep with muddy boots, don't invite them into your parlor. That's not loving. Yes, it is loving. It's the most loving thing you can do. Unless, of course, you enjoy cleaning carpets. This is a story I've never told. It's 35 years ago. I was in a church, and they had a Youth of Unity group, and it was a very wonderful group of teenagers, not so much the adults. There were 3 adults in charge. 2 of them loved creating drama. And they'd create drama over nothing, and they'd be fighting all the time with the third one. The third one was a guy who would come to me and say, hey, help me with this, Well, I'm not a person that takes things head on usually, because that usually isn't helpful. But what you do in that situation is you shine your light. In this case, shine the light of truth. I shine my light of truth. Together? I shine my light of truth. And so, when things would come up, this is what's true. This is the truth. Not fighting, not contending, not blaming, not getting into a tennis match. Just, this is the truth. And eventually the drama king and queen, got bored. And they stayed in the church, but they let go of their position because nobody was fighting them. It wasn't fun anymore. Does this ring a bell? Is this making wheels turn in your head? So, I was so happy to say to the third guy, because we had other people who wanted to volunteer, now you don't, and guess what he did? He resigned, because he liked the fight too. Secretly, I swear. But you got everything you wanted. I know, I just, and I realized, Now, what does that tell you? We're invested in drilling holes in our boat. We're invested in cleaning our carpet. We're invested in getting ourselves into useless, unnecessary suffering. You know, the great meditation teacher Eknath Easwaran was talking to his grandmother when he was 8 years old. He was a very precocious child, and he asked, his grandmother was truly a master, he felt, a spiritual master. And he said, Granny, in India, he said, Granny, how come there's suffering in the world? And she said, well, sit in that chair. So he sat in that chair. She said, now, hold on to that chair as hard as you can. Okay. And she grabbed a hold of his arms and she pulled as hard as she could. Now, she was 65 years old, but very, very strong. And he said, Granny, you're hurting me. And she said, okay, now, don't hold on to the chair. Just cooperate. And she picked him up and lifted him up. She said, that's why people are suffering. The difference, she said, between pain and suffering. Pain is a part of life, but you move with pain. And it's a temporary situation and you move with it. But suffering is something you perpetuate by resisting it. You say, but I should stand up for. Yes, you can stand up for whatever you want to stand up for. And you don't stand up against anybody. Here's a translation thing that really messes people up. You know, Gandhi is, of course, the master of nonviolence, and he was such a great being. But he used a Sanskrit term that was mistranslated in English as it was a Himsa Satyagraha, which was mistranslated in English as nonviolent resistance. But that's not what it meant in Sanskrit. It meant really harmless. Ahimsa means harmlessness, harmless or peacefulness, and that Satyagraha means truth muscle. Truth muscle. It's not resistance. It's the muscle of truth. It doesn't stand up against anybody. It's on another level. You do not solve the problem on the level it was created. You solve the problem in your own life, in your own consciousness. The wars that you fight with your own head on another level. But so often we say, but I got to do it perfectly. I've got to do it perfectly. And the biggest excuse in the world for not taking a spiritual step is to say, I got to do this just right. But Jesus has a not well known, because it's not real popular, parable that speaks to this issue. He said, what do you think about this? He said, there's a man, he had 2 sons, and he went to the first one. He said, son, you go out and work in the vineyard today. And the son answered and said, I will not. But then he thought about it again, regretted it, and went, and he worked. Then the man went to the second son, and he said the same thing. And the second son answered and said, I will go, sir. But he did not go. Which of the 2 did the will of the Father? And they said to him, the first. And he said, indeed. Meaning, you could look like hell. You could look terrible. You could be as resistant as you want to be, but then you do it. It's not about doing it, looking good. They call it football winning ugly. You know, all that matters is the W. Jane Hart calls it people have a good first act, but a bad second act. Or you can have a really not too good first act, but your second act is terrific, and that makes a good play. You engage life on the level of life itself, and you realize that struggling and resisting and going through all the hoopla of life is part of the experience of life. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to look good at it. You're going to, as a friend of mine said, everything I ever let go of had claw marks all over it. You know, you're going to do all those things, but the important thing is doing it. Not doing it perfectly. So take the steps that are yours to take, and you say, but you know, I get angry. Well, welcome to the planet Earth. Well, I didn't think the right thoughts. Well, so what? Well, I felt this way. Good. But did you do it? Did you do it? I doed it. Together? I doed it. So let yourself off the hook and be willing to take a spiritual step. I am willing to take a spiritual step. Together? I am willing to take a spiritual step. And I don't expect to do it perfectly. Together? And I don't expect to do it perfectly. This is called having a spirit that engages with life. It's a spirit that is lifting up. It's a spirit that doesn't drill holes, the holes of perfectionism in the boat. And one of the most important things is to keep your light up, keep your spirit up. How do you keep your light up and your spirit up in these troubled times? Well, how about Jesus' troubled times, or the times of the Apostle Paul? A third of the people that they talked to were slaves, and the other 2/3 were under the twin yokes of the oppressors and their religion in Jerusalem and the political oppressors in Rome. And they had a lot of stuff that we could not even imagine. Let me tell you right now, my day is pretty cushy every day. I got problems, but compared to them. But listen to what Paul said. And you ever read in the Bible, Lord? And I'm going to explain why I'm going to read it this way. In Greek, Lord meant higher authority. It didn't mean some kind of like guy on a throne with a beard. Lord meant higher authority. They use the word Lord for higher laws, for also the Lord over the manor or whatever, political authority. Also, for anybody who was in a position of authority. So this is what it says. Rejoice in your higher authority always. Again, I say rejoice. Be gentle with others. The higher authority is near to you. Now don't worry about anything, but in everything pray, asking with thanksgiving, sharing all your needs with God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will keep your hearts and minds safe. Finally, my brothers and my sisters, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are honorable, if there's anything good or worthy of praise, focus your mind on these things. We read it, think on these things, but it really meant meditate. Focus your mind on these things. What are you putting your attention on? How much attention should you be putting on negativity? Enough. Enough to know it's there. Enough to know it's a water that you're rowing through. What Jesus called the world. You can be in the world, but not of it. Enough. How much attention should you put on negativity? Enough to know how to navigate through life, to know what's going on. And sometimes you've got to do some processing. This is a thing, I just read this last week. They did a study of math tests, and they found that when students would write down for 5 minutes before the math test all their fears and negative thoughts about the math test, they get 5 points higher on the test. That's 5 out of 100. That's a half a grade. Just writing down the negative. But you said not to be negative. No. I said don't focus your mind on it. Let it go. Let it go. Be willing to release these things. But most of all, keep your mind steady and stayed on that which is positive, what he calls things that are just, noble, pure, lovely, honorable, and things that are funny. Things that are funny. Keep your sense of humor. Keep your sense of humor. My son loves to watch a show called Last Week Tonight by John Oliver. And he doesn't watch news shows. He doesn't read news things. He knows more about current events than anybody else, which brings me to a study that was done where they took people and where they get their information from, and they then gave them a test on current events. So guess who has had the highest grades on knowing the current events in the news than anybody else? People who got their news from comedy shows. Number one. Why? Well, maybe because a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Maybe because when you're in a positive, maybe you can take in. Because if you're in your negative thinking, you shut down, right? So maybe that's part of it. Part of it's that. And by the way, the people who were the least informed were the people who were listening to the angriest commentators. So what is this? This means you keep your light up. You keep your light up. You keep your sense of humor. You keep it moving. They've done studies on this. Of course they've done studies on this where they had people watch comedians. And then they measured their cortisol and epinephrine levels and their white blood cell counts and all the things that if you boil them all together, decide whether or not you're going to have a positive immune system and a positive mentality, or whether you're going to more likely to fall into depression or get sick. And they found that the people who watched the comedy, their measurable blood cells and brain chemicals and blood chemicals that were for health, mental and physical health, rose tremendously just watching comedies. Even when they did it with Richard Pryor. And he uses a lot of bad words, but you know what? It didn't matter. And another study At Harvard, they showed 2 documentaries. One was Mother Teresa, her life. The other was Attila the Hun, his life. You don't know much about Attila the Hun? Don't bother. It's not pleasant. Not a nice guy. They found that the people who watched the Mother Teresa, their positive blood chemicals, their brain chemicals, all went up. Their immune systems got stronger. Attila the Hun? No, not so much. It went down. But something really weird. They did a questionnaire of what they thought of Mother Teresa. And even the people who thought Mother Teresa was a phony and a fake and didn't like her still had their blood chemicals go up just as much as the other ones. Why? Because it's positive. You can't avoid being affected by positive energy even if you think you're resisting it. Do you go out into nature? You say it's too cold. Is it really? That's what they make clothes for. But if it's too cold for you, okay. But can you sit by the window? Can you engage with the beauty of life? Can you do things that nurture your soul, that lift you up? The peace, it says, that passes all understanding, or surpasses all understanding, is yours if you lift up into your higher nature. But you've got to move out of that part of yourself that keeps you stuck. And it really is a matter of attitude. Attitude. It isn't the things that are going on in the world. It isn't the things that are happening to you that will make the difference in your day-to-day life or even get better outcomes for you in the world. It is how you meet them and address them. To which I'm going to show you a cartoon which you aren't going to be able to read because it's too small, but I'll show it to you anyway. It's 2 panels. They're identical. It's somebody trying to feed a dog. There's a bowl of dog food about to be put down, and the dog is on its hind legs waiting for it, with 2 different thought bubbles. The first thought bubble is the dog thinking, awesome, dinner, served with love, just for me. The second one is, dog food again? So, do you see the circumstances in your life, like them or not? Do you see the circumstances in your life as an opportunity for you to lift up and to overcome the limitations that you have, the limitations that you're holding on to, the limitations that are holding you back? Or do you see it as an opportunity? Dog food, dinner served with love, just for me. You know, do you see it? Or do you see it as dog food again? Do you look through the lens of empowerment or of victimization? You know, I've shared many times about how when I was at college, my parents said, you cut your hair and don't go hitchhiking, or we'll cut you off. You won't get any support for college, and you got to move out. And I said, okay. And I moved to a little farm town, and where I had to cut my hair in order to sell my brushes. But anyway, and I put myself through school. Best thing that ever happened to me. I had a choice between being a victim. Dog food again. Dog food again. Or dinner served with love. It was the greatest opportunity of my life. I learned self-reliance. I learned to stand up for myself. I learned to live my life and determine for myself. Now you say, but I don't like it. You don't have to like it. You can have claw marks all over it, but take the step that is yours to take. Be willing to take the step that's yours to take. And don't stay stuck in that stuff. You know, I saw this when I was a kid. I was 10 years old. My dad was the president of the board of the church that we went to. And they brought in a new minister. She was a wonderful woman. She really was my mentor for many years, Mabel R. Carlin. Now, she took over the church from the woman who had founded it, who was now, I think, in her late 80s, and she was living in the retirement home nearby and causing nothing but trouble. She was spreading things about her. She was not going to let go of her church. So there was a group of people who would meet with them, and on and on and on. And I remember her sitting at dinner with us and saying, they can stand on their heads or swing from trapezes if they want, but I'm going to stand on principle, for that is holy ground. And it made an impression on me. She was not going to get caught up in the drama. But what she did do was she created an intentional family, which is an important thing to do. When you've got a family that doesn't support you, create an intentional family, whether it's an Al-Anon family or a family at the church or your friends and supporters, but an intentional family. And so what she did was the people who really were supportive, she handpicked them in the church, and they would meet for prayer and be supportive and hold the light. every week. And I found out about it because there'd be a class, and it would end at noon, and then everybody would leave, and then they'd all leave in their cars, and then the people in this group would drive back and park, and then go back into church and pray. And she demonstrated this for me. She showed me that it isn't about contending. It isn't about fighting. It takes two people to play a game of tennis. You have to make the decision whether or not you want to get into that consciousness. And you say, but I want to make a difference in the world. The difference you make in the world is the difference you make by shining your light. And then saying the things that you need to say, doing the things that you need to do under guidance. That's why you lift up. Because as Einstein said, the problem will never be solved on the level that it was created on. But it means you've got to be willing to get off it and get on with it. My favorite story in the Bible about getting off it and getting on with it is this one. Jesus went to Jerusalem for a religious festival, and near the sheep gate there was a pool with 5 porches called Bethesda. Now there was a large crowd of sick people lying on these porches, blind, lame, and paralyzed. And there was a man there who'd been paralyzed for 38 years. Jesus saw him lying there, and he knew this man had been sick for such a long time, so he asked him, "Do you even want to get well?" The sick man answered, "Sir, I don't have anyone here to put me in the pool when the water gets stirred up. When I'm trying to get in, somebody always gets in there first." Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your bed, and walk." He cut right through it. This man was of a belief system, which they had in their culture, that the very first person who got into the pool got the healing and everybody else was out of luck. Was it fair that this man who did not have the capacity to get into the water was not able to get into the water first? No, it was not fair. But it wasn't an excuse either, because on another level there was the solution. And the solution was to get up, pick up your mat, and walk. I get up, I pick up my mat, and I walk. Together? I get up, I pick up my mat, and I walk. That means taking responsibility for the consciousness that we've been given and not getting into useless, unnecessary contention. So many people come up to me nowadays and say, "Can you give a talk about people not telling me things that I don't want to hear them say or whatever?" And when I talk to them, what it comes down to is they're hitting the ball back. Because but I need to get them to understand. No, don't. Did you know that a poll was taken recently about science? And they found that 35% of Americans believe the sun revolves around the earth. You just let that soak in. 35%, you see, but shouldn't I be the one that tells them? Try that. Their teachers did for 13 years. It isn't ours. We have to understand people are at the level of consciousness they choose. They're at the level of consciousness they're capable of. They're at the level of consciousness they are. You don't argue with them. It's not loving. Now, there is a time when you've got to take action. You're making yourself a doormat. You're not being a victim. You have every right to take care of yourself, but 90% plus of the times that people come through it's useless. People come through the line sometimes and they want to argue religion. Now, I'm a paid professional. I should be good at it. I won't do it. I won't do it. Why? Because I'm certainly willing to discuss things. I'm willing even to have people disagree with me. I'm willing to do whatever. But you know what an argument is. It's a different manner of thing. And so you don't need to get into that with people. Just let it go by you. Let the ball go by you. Say, but I have things to do. Save your energy for that which is yours to do. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And what's the thing you can change? Your own consciousness, your own attitude. Dog food again? No. Dinner served with love just for me. You say, but this is a negative circumstance. Yes, aren't half of the circumstances in this world negative circumstances? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to use it to forward your growth? How are you going to use it to lift yourself up? You say, I don't want to use it to lift myself up. I want to fight it. Well, that's not going to work. What you got to do is take a stand within your own being for your own sanity. Take a stand within your own being for your own light and lift up into that light. So we're going to do that. We're going to do that. And so whatever it is that's been on your mind, that's been troubling you, that you've been thinking, oh, I wish I could fix it. Let it go. Let it go. And realize that your job is to row your boat through the water and make sure the water doesn't get into your boat. Realize that your job is to let your light shine and make sure that you put the protection around that candle flame and then lift it up, as Jesus said. You are the light of the world. Shine your light, lift it up high, put it on a lampstand so that all can see it. You don't have to do anything else with that light right now. I lift up my heart. I lift up my light. I lift up my mind. I lift up my attitudes. I lift up myself. And as Jesus said, if I be lifted up, all will be lifted up with me. I lift up. And I know what to do. And I do it. Thank you, God. And now let's just let our breath in and let it out and just let go of everything in our hands and open our hands and say, if any problem cannot be solved on the level of the problem, where can it be solved? It can be solved on the level of the solution, the higher. I have to lift up above what seems to be into what truly is. I have to lift up. I have to lift up beyond the level where it was created to the level of oneness where the true answer lies. How do I lift up? Well, some of us just imagine we're walking into an elevator and pushing a button and we're going to the observation deck of the Empire State Building and we feel ourselves lifting up, up, up. Using our imaginations is so powerful. Others of us just simply decide, if I was in my higher self, how would I feel? If I was in my higher self, what would I think? And it helps to just know as we move into this consciousness, as we move into this vibration, as we move deeply into it, to know my Christ consciousness lifts me up, and I am lifted up into my Christ consciousness. My Christ consciousness quiets my mind, and my mind becomes still in my Christ consciousness. My higher power is the peace that passes all understanding in me. And I find my peace in my higher nature. As I lift up into the true nature of my being, I feel myself energized in my higher self. And my higher self is lifting up my energy. The presence of God in me, the I am that I am in me, is all light, all life, all peace, all joy, divine order, power. The answer is always to lift up into my God nature. That God-filled essence of me, that beingness of me that is waiting for me. Not to figure out all my answers or to argue my way to a solution, but to lift up into that which knows already. When to speak, when to hold my peace, when to act, when to sit still. As I lift up into my true self, my higher nature quiets my mind, calms my emotions, settles in my body, lifts me up, energizes me. And so I take a moment to just imagine what it would be like, what it is like, as my higher nature, my higher self, takes charge over my mind, my emotions, my beingness. I let go of my need to control outcomes, to control other people, to control circumstances and situations. I let it all go. I open up to what I can do, which is lift up my eyes to keep my candle flame bright. To energize and stay uplifted. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And so it is. Well, our offering today is, I give from a higher place and I receive abundantly. So let's say that together. I give from a higher place and I receive abundantly. And silently, just take it in deeply. And now let's say it aloud again together. I give from a higher place, and I receive abundantly, and so it is. Amen.